what is gamification? To explain in simple terms, what would you say?
Well, I'm using gamification to boost the engagement of the user.
We also come across terms like game-based learning, scenario-based learning, simulations, and gamification. Say, what are the differences and the similarities between them with some examples?
This is the artificial conflict. I'm the input, and the output is how many times I'll be able to finish.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Genius Talk, where we pick the brains of thought leaders from the world of L&D. I'm Apurva, your session host for tonight, and I'm also an L&D marketer from Animaker. So for the people who don't know Animaker, well, Animaker is an AI animation platform with over 13 million users across the globe, and out of which 1/3 of them are actually L&D creators. And we have also ranked as the #1 design tool in G2 Crowd. And in today's episode, we are going to be talking about how gamification makes e-learning epic. And we've got Moe Ash with us. Hi, Moe Ash.
I don't know about gamification making it epic, but it's gotta make it functional, I suppose.
A quick introduction about Moe Ash. So he's basically the founder and also the chief learning architect for the Catalyst. So it is a consultancy that basically creates innovative learning solutions for organizations across the globe. And he is an international speaker, and he also constantly advocates about gamification at events and in webinars. And if you're somebody who is trying to learn about gamification, please do follow him on LinkedIn. It is gold mine. He has been talking about it so well and in a very understandable way. It is very easy for anybody to learn about it. So we are so happy to have you with us, as I told you earlier. So basically, Moe Ash, this interview is divided into 3 parts. The first part is called the Genius Journey, where we'll be talking about your incredible career journey. And then the second part of the interview is called Picking the Genius Brain, where we'll get into the main topic of today, that is gamification. And the final part is my favorite part, that is the rapid fire round, which I'm pretty excited about. So without any further ado, I think we can get started with the interview session. So the part 1 is called the Genius Journey. I think you've been in the industry for 14 years, right?
16.
16, okay, great.
I didn't update my LinkedIn. But yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so 16 years and you've been doing a pretty successful job. So did you actually start with the L&D industry, or did you transition from some other industry into L&D?
Transition from being a UN staff member.
UN staff member? Really?
Yeah, I was working for UNESCO. I was in the scientific department. I was holding the position of Quality Assurance Manager of the ICDL. So the ICDL is the International Computer Driving License. It's a certificate that used to teach people, because it's not there anymore. It used to teach people about basic computer knowledge and Microsoft and an understanding of IoT. And it should be enabling people as part of the SDGs on how to use technology and how it can help you better off your career journeys and progression and whatnot. So I was working there, and my hope was not UNESCO. My hope was actually UNDP. UNDP is the creme de la creme of all UN bodies, and I wanted to do that. So I did my master's on international development, hoping that I would get there, and didn't happen at all. And afterwards, after a couple of years working there, I got pushed, literally pushed into learning and development. So I met a person that I used to work with before. She was a call center manager, and she was like, "How are you doing in your job?" I'm like, "It's okay. It's a job. I'm not extremely happy about it." So-and-so is looking for trainers. I'm like, trainers? What would I do? I'm going to go and explain topics? Yeah, but like, try it out. So I went for an interview with that person, and I knew that person before. And he asked me two questions. One is a very personal question. I cannot talk about it right now because it was out of the context of an interview, unrelated by all means possible. And the second one, what do you know about like soft skills and training? My answer was absurd. And that was it. I'm like,
Oh, you got selected?
what about the interview? Like, the interview. I'm like, it's fine. Just go meet the CCO. Go do the formal interview with her. And that day, he was delivering a training. And then he told me, you know what? I'm going to go smoke a cigarette, continue on. Dude, what? And I'm looking at the PowerPoint and I'm looking at the people. I'm like, what should I do? And that was it. I was thrown into it.
Oh, there was no warning.
No, not at all. And for 4 years, I kept asking the guy who used to be my first mentor, why did you choose me? Like, I don't know. You seem possible to do that job. And this is how it started. I did not choose, you know, the accidental trainer? I'm the accidental industry joiner. So I got into this, and my thought at first was to be a public speaker. And then I'm going to be a consultant in organizational L&D because my bachelor's degree was in human resources. So I took me a couple of diplomas and certificates about like talent management and performance management and L&D management and how to do assessment centers and competency matrices. And I started to, you know what, I'm going to take after this. And I went into it and I did a couple of consultancy gigs. It was okay. And after years, I stumbled upon a job where they wanted a product manager that can deliver specific type of trainings. I didn't understand. It was a company that does game-based learning and board game simulations. So I went there and it was called a product manager. So what is a product manager? You hold a project, you deliver it to the public, and you're responsible for it. And then at that time, I was already working a little bit with design. Like, I'm trying to design my new things without knowing that I'm designing. I like research, hence UN staff member. I used to do research. I used to do a lot of work that way. Even during college, I used to be in models of United Nations and do foreign policy research papers and whatnot. So he saw in me, you know what? Help me do R&D. Long story short, I became the R&D manager. And I started to design games. And that's how I got into instructional design / game-based learning and gamification. And it's been 9 years since that time. Got into being an R&D manager. And afterwards, I was a business partner. And then I ended the business. And I took myself out of it. And after I took myself out of it 2 years later, I opened up my own business, which is very specific into creating learning programs, learning experiences, and specifically gamification systems and game-based learning assets and products. So yes, I did not choose this. I got into it and then I found myself in it. As simple as that.
How long since you started the Catalyst?
The Catalyst has started back in 2018. And we started off with one program to prove that design is key, not training. And we did a gamble. We took the most program that is dependent on trainers and we wanted to change the stigma, which is TOT, training of trainers. And we wanted to prove that it's not a trainer and how influential and motivating he is. It's about a really good design. It's a really good system that can leverage the learning objectives needed for a program to manifest and be proper. And we did another thing, which is we added the program with a layer of gamification. And afterwards, we became the only TOT that applies gamification and miniature game-based learning assets in it. And it's been going on for 6 years. We're the only program that does that when we have over 200 graduates right now from the program. Yeah.
Life takes you to places you're not, you didn't even expect in the first place. That was amazing. So now we'll get into the second part of the interview, that is picking the genius brain. Now we are getting into the topic of the video. Let's start with some basics. So whenever we share the word gamification, we always associate it with points, badges, and leaderboards, the typical PBL. So, and I'm also somebody who really thought, oh, that is gamification, right? So, but you've mentioned in many of your interviews that no, that is just adding elements, game elements to your the programs. So that is not gamification. It's not even touching the surface level of it. So if I had to ask you what is gamification, to explain it in simple terms, what would you say?
Okay. Obviously, if I had a dime for every time, I would speak about something like this. But it's not only me. I mean, in the circles of like the gamification community, we're all concerned with this. I mean, we're all talking about this. Not only me. I mean, there's a lot of us. We're just a small breed. We're just a small group of people that talk about that. So if I took a regular program and I added elements, I'm gonna call elements of points, and whenever you do something, you get a point. Good. And if you gather up those points and like accumulate them, you get yourself a badge. And there's a leaderboard that puts up the entire system for everyone to see. Well, you're not doing gamification. You're just making points, putting badges, no meaning, no purpose to it. And that's the core of it. What's the purpose of the points? And if I put a point, how is it related to the activity that the person did? And I'm not saying learning here. I'm just saying the activity. Because there are certain LMSs, I'm not going to call names. There are certain LMSs. You open up the course, 25 points for you. 25 points. What did I do? I don't know.
Just for showing up.
25 points. Like, well, and I said this in many episodes and like interviews before. Like, I have a little kid. She's 4 years old. So if she partake in a game or in a competition, all the kids get participation trophies. You all get trophies. You all win. That's it. You just won. You don't know why I won. I don't know if I did good, I did bad. Do I deserve it? Do I don't? That's the problem. Okay, and I get myself a badge. And the badge, a problem with the badges is, if you saw a policeman and he has a badge, you obviously know that person went through a police academy, rigorous training. That person deserved the badge. If I'm getting a couple points upon a badge that I did not deserve, I am not putting any qualification, not putting any meaning towards that badge. I just got myself a badge. Remember that time on LinkedIn when everyone would get a badge and just put it up on LinkedIn? It was not a way for me to say that I'm good. It's just a way to say that, you know what? This is me ego stroking. I have a badge. You don't. So other people would get it. And that's why many websites started to have like badges, credible. You buy badges and you offer it to people. It's a gimmick. It's nothing. And on a leaderboard, let's just say Apurva and me on a leaderboard. You came to the LMS. You went through the e-learning. You got yourself 100 points. I don't know how you calculated the 100 points. But I got in. Apurva's already at 100. She's on top. Why would I even try? I'm losing anyways. Sometimes, and that's why I'm saying, leaderboards, badges, and points can ruin a gamification system. And there's a complete research paper called The Dark Side of Gamification, where people might be doing unethical behavior to get points. Gamification is simply a layer of strategy, a discipline, a genre that is put up on an existing solid system. You don't start with gamification. You start with the system that you're building up. It can be a learning system, a learning design system. It can be a sales system. And then what you're doing is that you want to amplify that system and make people more invested in getting to the final destination of that system. So I'm using gamification to boost the engagement of the user, of the learner, of the player with the system. So it's not a thing that I start with. It's a thing that I consider. Should I use gamification or shouldn't I? Would this help in boosting the motivational levels of people with the system or not? Simply as that. So where does it come from? In the world of games, games are simple systems, very simple systems. Input, output. And in the middle, you have yourself a conflict.
Great. So this leads me to the next question, that is, you have a lot of clients coming up to you and asking, I want to do gamification. And mostly you've told that the reply is, why do you want to do gamification? Why do you want it? So my question here is, why is it important to know your objectives, and why and when it is appropriate to do gamification? Like there are so many ways to educate people. When is it really appropriate to do gamification?
If a client can come to me and can ask, I want a board game, which is not gamification, it's game-based learning, and we can talk about the nuances later. I want a board game. I want a gamification system. I want whatever. More or less because they're not part of the field, not because they're ignorant. They're not part of the field. They believe it's an engagement tool or it's a strategy that can help the people. So I need to first ask, why are people needing gamification? What is tripping them from engaging? What is pushing them to not do what is needed? It can be something that gamification will not solve. Gamification lends itself if there is a need for people to get more engaged with an existing system. If the system itself has loopholes, gamification is not going to solve it. For example, an onboarding that is too long. Is it too long because of the content is mundane and constant and dull, and you want gamification to ease it? Maybe. An onboarding that is too long in hours. Can we use a blended learning approach and decrease the cognitive load by adding a gamification layer and let people get engaged synchronously and asynchronously? Fine. But if the onboarding is dependent on subject matter experts, that they are the key factor of the knowledge, and the whole system is riding on people, not a design, well, I'm so sorry, gamification is not going to help with this one. Then I need to see what the SMEs are doing and play with this and see if I could work it or not. That's number one. Another thing, maybe gamification, they want it as a gimmick for people to be competing over a leaderboard. Hold on. Number one, why do you need a leaderboard? So people would know. Good. Do people check leaderboards in general? We don't know. Okay. Will you hang the leaderboard physically, or you're going to be putting it on an email or like on the screensaver of, we didn't think about this. Okay, hold on. How many people are going to be competing over the leaderboard? 1,000, 500, 2,000. Good. There's a huge difference with a global leaderboard, meaning Apurva came. She gained up. I am not going to be competing if I find a lot of people are loving that. That's the high score. That's the crazy score that I'm not going to be able to do. One of the tricks is that you can do a weekly leaderboard that restarts every week. And every time I'm feeling there's a chance for me. And it adds up. So Apurva was a beast on week 1, but she didn't do anything on week 2. It's time for me to shine, or others. And it keeps on that competition. And then when we're competing on the leaderboard, is there a physical reward? Or is there an offboarding? What they will do or learn, will it be utilized on the job? Or they're just competing aimlessly? Is there a meaning? Is there a purpose behind it? I don't know. Are they getting better for a reason, or what they're doing every week is almost the same, then why are we doing that? And also, if you're letting them compete on something that has nothing to do with the job, with the learning, what's the point? Also, in the words of Kathy Moore, so if the problem is environmental, I'm going to help with gamification. But the environment is not catering a possibility for me to do what I've learned, to do what should be done. So whatever that I'm learning, I will not be able to apply it. Then first, fix the environment, fix the culture, roll it out, and I will help in boosting it.
Let's get into the juicy topics. So when we hear about gamification, we also come across terms like game-based learning, scenario-based learning, simulations, and gamification. So so it'll be nice if you can say what are the differences and the similarities between them with some examples, so that will be really useful for our audience.
Well, let's start off. So we understood what game is, and obviously English is not my first language, but English has a distinct difference between the word game and play. I'm going to take it from the top. So if this is a lighter, I'm a smoker. If I did this, what am I doing?
Yeah.
I'm playing. Aimless. This is aimless. Game. Apurva. Time me in a minute. How many times I'll be able to throw this in a minute? This is the artificial conflict. I'm the input, and the output is how many times I'll be able to finish it. Understood? So this is what a game is. Now let's get into some nuances. The nuances, we have something first called game for learning. So a game for learning is, Apurva found a neat, lovely game from a shop, Catan, Halapagus, Gloomshaven, come on mate. She was like, you know what? This is going to be very good in my next decision-making program. I'm going to let people play the game as it is. And once it's done, I'm going to do some projections that are related to the topic. And that would help let them understand decision-making and problem-solving. And I'm just making this up. I'm just saying anything, brainstorming with you. So a game designed with some learning goals in mind, possible learning goals in mind, and we use it to learn something based on a stated knowledge or a performance gap. So we already am doing this for a decision-making program or a problem-solving program or a project management program, come what may. And then I'm just using this, an off-the-shelf commercial game, to, you know what, it's going to help me do my work even better. Okay, so this is game for learning. And afterwards, you'll be like, and see how we negotiated and see how we worked in teams. I'm like, okay, you're projecting just to help. I'm not being against it. If you want to do it and it works, it works. It works. But don't call it gamification, for the love of God. It's not gamification. Okay? And second, then serious games. So serious games. You know, I know, we all know, we've been into COVID. And before COVID, the WHO did a complete serious game simulation about if a pandemic came, what will we do? The military does those as well. NASA does those as well. I used to do a specific serious game for business where we're simulating a failed business and how we can leverage it. There's also your flight simulations. And I used to work with a company, an oil and gas company, that used to have a huge simulation in it for how people will work with the drills. So instead of going into the mid-set of the ocean, I'm letting them simulate something. And here we're talking a custom-built game with a specific learning objective, and it's not created for any form of entertainment. Okay? And games here are created from scratch for a very specific purpose and objective. And by the way, away from gamification, there's a complete conference called the Serious Games Conference. It's done in Italy and it's done in Sweden. And if you looked at the people that go there, the military, different militaries, tech companies, They're going there for not games. They're looking into game theory, game research to let people do certain things. So it's not for entertainment by all means possible. And then we have our very own game-based pedagogy. This is an approach, the process and practice of teaching using games from an instructor's point of view. So you're an instructor, I'm a learner, and you're putting aspects like, Mo, if you came on time, you're going to get a point. If you adhere to the processes, you're going to get points. If you do this, you'll be getting praise. You'll be getting recognition. Remember when you were a kid and you get that star on your head? I used to love that one. And I would compete with the others to be the super kid of the week. Yeah, we loved that. We loved it. It had no meaning whatsoever. The super kid would do nothing. It's just being the super kid and having that star for an entire week. So this is to improve teaching and delivery practice. It's an approach to delivery. It's not for class management. No more. Just to let people adhere to the processes. And it's an approach for teaching. Now, on the other hand, the one that is very juicy, so game-based learning. Game-based learning is not a board game. It's not an escape. It's not a card game. It's an approach for learning, meaning I am going through an experience where I'm going to get engaged with a game that is designed to let people practice a skill, retain knowledge. So by the end of doing this, I've learned because I had the enough application. Game-based learning is an approach for learning. It's the process and practice of learning using games from a learner standpoint this time. And here, it's done to increase learning effectiveness, practicing skills, to improve engagement. It's an approach so that people learn how to do a specific thing. So once we're done with it, I'll learn it. I did it. I can go back to my job and I know how I can handle negotiation, how I can follow steps in dealing with change.
Yeah, nice.
Gamification is none of all what was mentioned. It's nothing of what was mentioned. Gamification, as we said, is the application of mechanics in a non-game context to promote desired behaviors and drive specific learning outcomes. In this way, I am driving motivation and engagement formats in a system to impact the entirety of its components. So I am looking into a specific system and I'm trying to look at how am I going to make this system more engaging with the user, with the learner. We have two ways of gamification. We have structure gamification or structural gamification, and we have narrative-based gamification or content-based gamification. I can take an existing system and add a structure. So instead of assignments, it's battles. Instead of KPIs, it's scrolls of wisdom. Instead of users or learners, they're knights, they're warriors, they're mages, they're dragons. So I'm changing the structure. Narrative-based gamification is that I am putting them into a continuous story where by going through the story, they're going through the system. And this is more complicated than the structure. The structure is easy. I'm changing the structure, I'm changing some names, and I'm doing something, and it's fine. But the narrative, it's an actual story that unfolds. And every time that story, it becomes an analogy to what we're doing. For example, we did a gamification system before that a company wanted to increase the form of communication on that is happening between employees in 6 different countries. So how do you want them to communicate? And why first? Why? Because projects are not being done, a lot of procrastination, teams do not know one another, and they're not using Slack. Some teams use WhatsApp, some teams use emails, some teams use Slack, some teams used Trello, Jira.
Exactly.
And we want to unify one communication channel where everyone's going to work. Okay, now we're talking. So here, the code is to engage people on Slack for the job and reward them for having that communication there. So we build the entire system inside of Slack. Most of what we do is based on the Holy Bible of gamification research, which is the MDA, Mechanics, Dynamics, and Aesthetics. What we're trying to do is based on the needed actions that the client wants. We're creating mechanics that would push and nudge the people towards doing this. So if I want them to create a specific type of habitual behavior, then I need to put a fixed reward that is related to how they do this. And every time they do it, they get rewarded for it. That's one of the mechanics. Another form of mechanics can be social pressure, like the one that we've talked about. Another one is having progression systems, meaning that I need for the system to offer me complexity at each and every level, like how I play Mario, and every time the game gets harder. If the system is stable, it's constant, it's the same, we do the same thing every time, then I'm not going to be working with that system because it's boring. It has to have a strategy, and that strategy is stemmed out of what we want people to do, and strategy is a mechanic. You're trying to push people to do specific things, to do specific actions. You're nudging them to do a behavior. That behavior that manifests has to be planned for, has to be done in a proper way. That's the dynamics. So mechanics, that's the dynamics. So as designers, we're creating mechanics that people do not see. They only see it in what way? They see it in function, turns, points, stories. They see it in eliminations, in leaderboards. This is the behavioral mechanic. How I can make that mechanic show to the people. I have to put it in a functional way. So they can do specific behaviors, which is dynamics. This is what the people can look, see, hear, touch, and feel. That's the dynamics. And all of this is wrapped up in music, pictures, colors, engagement factors. That's aesthetics. That's the MDA in the simplest way possible.
I had this doubt while I was doing my research about MDA. So, was it a theory proposed for game design that we adapted into gamification, or
It's a game research framework. They use it in video games, board games, any form of games. It's done for systemizing, because gamification is a system. At the end of the day, this is system engineering.
We have been talking about a lot of different things under the broader topic of gamification, but trust me, we have only touched the surface. This is just part one of our conversation. If you want to learn more from Moe Ash, where he reveals on how he created a game-based micro-learning program without the help of points, badges, and leaderboards, do not miss out on part 2. Head over to Animaker Genius Talk with Moe Ash, part 2, to continue watching this amazing conversation.